when I got to SiriusXM, I mean, really just fell out of my chair about how big the place was, how much there was to it, and all the channels. I mean, dedicated channels just for football, just for baseball, just for college football. I mean, I learned so much. And
Hey guys, welcome to the How I Got Here podcast. I'm your host, Travis Waters of PlayerProps.ai, and I created this podcast to share stories that are worth telling. Whether it's someone going from zero to hero, hero to zero, or simply something in between. On today's episode, we talk to Mr. Matt Deutsch of VSiN and the Better Sports Network and learn about his fascination for animals early on didn't pan out into him becoming a vet, but instead he parlayed that into a sports broadcasting career spanning many decades. Let's go ahead and jump into that conversation now. I hope you guys enjoy. Hey guys, it's me, Travis, with the How I Got Here podcast. We are now on episode 12, and joining us on this episode, we have a good friend of mine in the space, Mr. Matt. Now, if you don't recognize him by face, you recognize him by voice or by name. Matt, if you can just real quickly, high-level overview, where are you right now at this point in 2025 in terms of what you have going on?
my name's Matt Deutsch. I've worked in sports media my whole life. I'm the sports manager at VSiN, the Vegas Stats and Information Network, and also the co-founder of Better Sports Network. I run that company out of my beautiful basement studio and work for VSiN remote as well. So it all happens right here.
All right. The first question that I like kind of started things off so we can get a starting point on the chronological timeline is think back as early as your memories allow. What is the first thing, the first job, the first career that you ever had an idea or a concept of this is what I want to be when I grow up, and how old were you when you had that idea?
Wow. Well, I was obsessed with sports forever, but I think my love of animals was actually stronger. And I can remember back in junior high school, wanting to build a career around animals as a veterinarian of all things. And I did get an opportunity to shadow some vets and get into a program at high school to find out how much science and math and work is really involved. And it's not just about making nice to these animals. So it was a short-lived dream because it was a lot of work. I was a little intimidated.
So you were actually doing things in high school that was part of that career idea, and then maybe like in sophomore, junior year of high school, you're like, oh, whoa, 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 this isn't actually what I thought it was gonna be. So prior to you graduating high school, then when you kind of, I don't know, just did you put that idea in your back pocket and maybe I'll come back to this? Did you, because you saw the math and the work involved, you're like, oh, I definitely don't have interest in that. What was the thought process that came around to, okay, what's next?
I think it was immediately thinking sports was the way to go. And to be fair, in high school, I was fooling around. I was having so much fun. I wasn't really very career driven. So it was really about, what I'm going to do with my friends that day and where we're going to go on spring break. So, I mean, to be honest, I really wasn't that focused on my career. And frankly, in college also, I wasn't that driven, so I've always had a passion for sports. I think in my back of my mind, I kind of felt like if I could ever get paid to watch sports for a living, that would be where I go. So that was always the dream, and we've made it happen.
That was so actually that's something that I brought up on I think maybe like 3 or 4 episodes ago, where my own experience is very similar to that. Where in high school, and it wasn't that I necessarily had a dream that I'm like, oh, that's not what I want. It's that I wasn't really thinking about the future. It's like I'm having fun. It's high school,
Yeah.
playing sports, doing the drama stuff, and what I mentioned in this previous episode is where I there's this role that is at school is called a guidance counselor, and I think their job is to guide, and that's that whoever I'm sure we had one, but I'm pretty sure they did not do that, because what was shocking to me, just to recall this moment, is uh, walking the stage at my high school graduation. So I've completed the entire thing. We're all graduating, and they're announcing what colleges the people have got accepted to in their programs. And I had no idea, A, that was going to happen, and B, that I already had to figure that out. Nobody like took me by the hand. It's like, okay, this is what we do after high school. And so I came across the stage and they're like, Travis Waters, undeclared. I'm like, I feel like an idiot. Like nobody told me what to do here. So in your experience, it was in somewhat of a similar spectrum where you're like, okay, I'm having fun, I'm having a good time, but you knew in the back of your mind that you really enjoyed sports. So did you have any inkling of post high school career path while you were still in high school, or was it just graduation and okay, now what do I do next?
Yeah, I mean, just took all my energy to just apply to colleges and get in. I was frankly looking for the college furthest away from my parents where I had to do the least work. So I went to the University of Buffalo and had a great time out there and did a lot of things then that I wouldn't be doing now. So it was good to get it out of my system, if you'll say. And I still was following sports. I did one active thing in college. I did have an internship in senior year with a radio station in Buffalo and got to do a lot of the work that to learn what a broadcaster would do and someone who was in sports. So I did enough to know that radio and sports was what it was going to be. So it took me 4 years and a graduation to figure it out. But I didn't do a lot in college, but at least I did come out with that radio internship.
Well, I was going to ask you I don't know if you mentioned this the beginning part of that, but your degree, was it journalism based?
It was communication. We didn't have communications, the plural, like a lot of our friends in Fordham and Syracuse have, where they were actually working in TV and radio and journalism. I was learning all about nonverbal communication and cognitive theory and basically what goes into speaking with people. It wasn't very thrilling. And nor was it very challenging. And someone like me needs to be challenged. If it's something that's going to be that kind of easy like that, I'm going to take the easy way out. At least I did back then. So didn't put a lot into it. Was very proud to graduate in 4 years. Quite a trick. But when I came out of college, I knew sports and I knew radio was where I wanted to go.
So I know you mentioned near the end of your collegiate career you had that internship. Did you have the inkling, the internal thought of before you had the internship of this is what I want to do, or was it the internship that created that this is what I want to do?
Well, I grew up loving the radio, Travis, and listening overnight to Sports Radio 66 WFAN, the first sports radio station in the country. And I was just fascinated with sports and radio. So I kind of felt like that was where I wanted to go. So that was the nature of finding and identifying the internship. But then once I got there, learning the skills, seeing the skills, really proving to myself that I could do this. I could write a sports update. I can edit a sports cast. I could run a control board for the morning show. And yes, I can get hypnotized on the radio as well, on national radio. So, I had a lot of fun with the internship, but learned just enough to know that this was something that I could do and I could marry my passion with my skill and watch sports.
So you had the internship prior to graduating college. Were you sending out feelers, applications to all areas that you either are interested or maybe like nationally, like I'll go, whoever puts me on radio, you take me? Or was it graduation first, then figure out the next plan?
Definitely graduation first, milk it for all it was worth in college. And then the whole summer of fooling around up in Buffalo. But then when I got home, I got serious. And I can remember really attacking it regionally and looking at every radio station in the New York tri-state area and beyond, what their formats were. We didn't have, we're just at the internet right now at 1996. So like barely internet. So really looking up libraries and things like that, newspapers to go find the radio stations, who the points of contact were that were the hiring managers. And this wasn't just sports, any radio, because I did not have the Syracuse Newhouse degree, the Connecticut School of Journalism. It was really nothing. So I knew I needed to get my hands-on experience, and I found a community radio station nearby where I live outside New York City in Westchester County, WVOX. And it was independently run, and I walked in there, and they hired me. A month later, I'm the program director. And, I said, boss, I don't really know what I'm doing here. He said, Matthew, my boy, you'll be fine. So really immediately learned every aspect of broadcasting from community radio, which was the greatest thing that ever happened to me, and great advice I could give to anyone is there's no better way to learn than hands-on. I was running control boards. I was reporting live news with snipers on the roof. I was cleaning toilets. I was selling. I was writing. I was answering phones. Like it was literally everything, hiring people, doing evaluations. So, me at 21 years old running this small community radio station was a dream and really leveled up my skills.
Now, how long between the college graduation did it take for you to get that opportunity?
It was only about a month. I mean, I can remember because it was right in my backyard. And they just asked me to come on in and say hello, and they hired me on the spot. So I really didn't get an opportunity to do a lot of interviews. or to see what would have happened if Roanoke, Virginia picked up the phone, or if one of the sports play-by-play jobs that I was trying to get would have picked up the phone. I mean, who knows what would have happened? But I was very fortunate to work nearby and home, learn everything in the community format, and still be near New York. I mean, it is the number one city in broadcasting and media, and I didn't want to leave New York. Everybody else in radio has to leave 8, 9 cities in 5 years. I mean, the struggle is real, and I didn't have to do that. I've always been in this area, and I'm very proud of that.
So while you have this opportunity, you the full time role where you're literally wearing every single hat possible, you're thrown into the fire on most of them. Which ones during this chaotic time of learning kind of stuck out as so out of the let's just say 20 responsibilities, which of the 20 was like I actually enjoy this one the most? And question B to that part B to that question is was that interest, if you had one, something that you put more time into?
Well, two of them come to mind immediately. One of them was being a reporter at the high society dinners and events and galas all around Westchester County, New York, and New York City. So we would cover the society scene and the newspaper journalists of the time, the actors, the politicians. If anybody was raising money or having a charity dinner and all, the black tie rubber chicken circuit, there was me with my WVOX microphone at the Waldorf Astoria, at Le Cirque, at the Four Seasons. I remember going to Kenneth Cole fashion shows. Like I was at like stuff that people would die to be at. And, I have no idea, who a lot of these people are. Of course, I'm doing my research. So I've interviewed some like fabulous people at these events. The former governor, Mario Cuomo, Robin Leach, Kenneth Cole. I mean, you just, the list goes on and on. So I always enjoyed because it was hard to prepare. I didn't know who was going to be in the room. So I'm looking around. Oh, there's Kenneth Cole. What are you going to ask Kenneth Cole? We have 5 minutes with him. So like that, I learned a lot from that of being able to kind of interview on my feet and to be able to get interesting questions out and compelling questions. The other one was editing my boss's book. So William O'Shaughnessy runs WVOX and WRTN. He's passed away. He was an independent owner, and for years he would give these editorials on the radio station about local politics and the garbage pickup and good deeds people were doing and commentary about the wars and everything. And he had stacks and stacks of cassettes. And one day he wanted to write a book. So it was my job to go through all of the interviews he's ever conducted and all the commentaries and listen to them and not only decide what was going to be in the book, but then also transcribe from audio to tape or to writing with a typewriter. I guess I had a computer then, no internet, but computer. And I can remember just typing these out. I mean, now you could probably AI that and just put the cassette in. And well, what's a cassette? All the kids want to know. But I can remember listening to hours of conversations and typing them out long form. And then I got to work with a real editor at Fordham University Press who took all of my notes and put them into the book. And I got to learn what a real editor does and all the shorthand and all the little symbols that they do when they're edited. So it was super cool to learn that.
During your time with so at 22, you've thrown into the fire. You have 20 million hats at this radio opportunity. How long did that last for?
Well, I was there probably for 4 years, and I was always trying to make it to WFAN sports radio in New York. That was my dream. It's where I wanted to be, and met enough people that finally someone opened the door. My friend Dennis Nardone, who's a corrections officer in Scarsdale, New York, and Harrison, New York, excuse me. And he was friends or friendly with the program director of WFAN, Eric Spitz. So Dennis arranged for me to come in on a tour and see this fabulous mecca of broadcasting that I've always dreamed of. And I walked in and I saw WFAN and I met people and I sat down in Eric's office and explained my story and I told him I would do anything to work for him. And he sent me out with a WFAN cup and a t-shirt and a keychain and said, call me in a few weeks. And of course I followed up and was very diligent. And out of that meeting, I was hired part-time at WFAN. I was still working at WVOX, but I was looking to get married at that point, and I was actually working 3 jobs for about 2, 3 years to get the wedding done and to advance my career. So it's a crazy time. I was working in the newspaper business as well. and I was delivering newspapers and deciding where to drop the free newspapers in the Bronx, New York. It was a free paper, so you had to decide where all the people are. Are they at the McDonald's or at the post office? Is this a heavy trafficked corner? You've all walked around the city where you pick up a free paper. Like that was my job. I'm walking around the Bronx on Gun Hill Road, figuring out where to drop these newspapers. So it was a crazy time with the newspaper and WFAN and WVOX. But I've always been a hustler, and it came together, and I learned a lot of extra skills than just radio along the way.
How long did so you go from juggling many hats with one job, and then you go from juggling many hats with many different jobs, hustling, like you said, you paid for the wedding, you do what needed to be done. How long did the multi-job path last, or was it something where you're just simply waiting for your dream job to give you that full-time opportunity, and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna leave the other things I'm working on, and now that I got the dream job full time, I'm here. Kind of how did that play out?
Yeah, I transitioned out of WVOX when I worked at WFAN. It was only three jobs for about 6 months, and then I kept the newspaper gig and was working at FAN. And when they made me full time, that was it. I mean, that was all I was going to do. It was not a lot of money, but I didn't need a lot of money back then. So I was full time, one job for the first time, probably around 2001, I would say. And it was a thrill to be able to be working there, and to say that I was part of the team, and to have a full time salary is always nice.
So now I'm curious that you had this dream job the dream opportunity. You got the dream job, the dream opportunity. And I know right now in 2025, as you already covered what you're doing now, it's not currently that. So I need to understand, how did that end? Was it your choice? Was it economy? What kind of happened? How long were you there, and what was the end of that like?
I was at WFAN for about 4 years, and I was doing very well. I was moving from weekend overnights to night times to middays, producing, a big time radio show in the middle of the day. And I was loving it. The passion was there. I was working my butt off. I was very successful. I was trying to make some more money. I was trying to grow my career. And I felt that, it was going to be very hard for me to grow again at WFAN. Like basically the morning show or the afternoon drive, Mike and the Mad Dog show might have been the only way that I could really grow. I was taking on some management responsibilities as well, which was great. I was doing some payroll, and I was working with reporters, and I was approving promos that air in the break. So I wasn't just a producer. I was growing skill wise, but it just wasn't translating to advancement, and I didn't see a path for me to advance. And Sirius before SiriusXM merger, was the thing, right? Everybody wanted to be at satellite radio. I mean, all the people from around the country, broadcasters, were all in one place. And it was also in New York City. And my former colleague at WFAN, Steve Cohen, moved over to Sirius to run all of sports for Sirius. I had a great relationship with Steve. They had a lot of opportunity, and I saw it as a way to grow. I love WFAN. I love local radio, but this was national. I knew I had to learn more about broadcasting. I know the national scene is so much different than local. And when I got to SiriusXM, I mean, really just fell out of my chair about how big the place was, how much there was to it, and all the channels. I mean, dedicated channels just for football, just for baseball, just for college football. I mean, I learned so much. And then I was put on specialty assignments at SiriusXM to kind of work on their most important content. So I got to work with Tony Stewart, producing a NASCAR show. I knew nothing about NASCAR, so I got to learn all about NASCAR from my friend Tony, who was two-time Cup Series champion and a Hall of Famer and a great guy. He taught me a lot. I got to work with Reggie Jackson on his show, Tiki Barber on his show, and of course the NFL Sunday Drive, probably the biggest, best show I've ever produced, an 8-hour live NFL look around show on Sundays from noon to 8 Eastern. SiriusXM, or Sirius at the time, was the only place that had the rights for all 32 radio broadcasts. So not only did we have reporters at every stadium, and I'm determining which reporter we're going to go to as we're keeping people updated on the NFL scores, but we could go to the actual play-by-play. So this is a producer's dream, right? 4th and 1 to Cincinnati. Let's head to the Bengals radio network, and we're going live to the radio, and as soon as they get stopped, I'm watching the Eagles. I'm like, we got to get this Eagles kickoff on. They're about to kick off overtime. We go right from Cincinnati to Philadelphia, and we bring their play-by-play in. Oh my God, they just called timeout. Now there's a break. All right, let's get the Eagles reporter at the stadium to fill 30 seconds while they're in timeout. So imagine me with two phones in both ears, 8 TVs on the wall. I'm drinking a Mountain Dew every hour, standing up. I'm coordinating interviews after the game with players in the locker room. So a crazy experience on Sundays and right up my alley.
That that sounds like, so you already experienced the multitasking thing, and and then just
Right.
picturing you with the phones on each side. You, because I feel like the previous roles that you had at other locations that essentially strengthen the muscle of the multitask.
Yes.
When you got thrown into that scenario that you're in there, it's the dream job. Plus, I already know how to handle all these things, so I can only imagine how much fun you were having at the time. I do want to take a step back to one of the things you said before you were talking about the serious of why you left your that dream job at the radio station. One of my favorite things that I'm experiencing and discovering while hosting this show, this podcast, is the parallels that like your story has with my story. And so like the one thing that jumped out is you had your dream job, and if I understand correctly, you left because you essentially got to the ceiling. You didn't see any growth happening, any roles, and you're just like, okay, if this is the best there is, and there's this other thing that's kind of what is XM radio, what is satellite radio, what is this other stuff? Is that so? Do I have the understanding pretty good where it wasn't anything, any fallout, anything negative? It's just you essentially got you capped yourself, or not capped yourself, but you hit that ceiling. Is that right?
Definitely left on good terms. Was
Yeah.
transparent about it, which I've always done. I will say, looking back, there is some impatience on my end. And of course, right, we're 26, 27 years old. You're having a lot of success. The media market's booming. SiriusXM's there. They got free pretzels, right? They're giving away free pretzels in the cafeteria. So, like, it was like the
That's the
Shangri-La.
most important thing. It's the
Of
free
course.
fruit pencil.
It was like the Shangri-La. But, looking back at it, and I can remember thinking, the program director, who's a legendary name in the field, Mark Chernoff, and Eric Spitz, I didn't see these guys leaving, and I didn't see me being able to ascend to their positions without going somewhere else first. But and it proved true. I mean, Mark Chernoff just stepped down about a few years ago. But, part of me thinks if I was able to stick it out at WFAN all those years, now I would be the program director. And I do have a little regret about that I've never shared before.
So, if, in comparison to all the experiences that happened thereafter, you still have that there's small little piece that's like, man, what could have been? Even though you had that amazing opportunity and amazing career with Sirius, and then now in kind of running your own stuff right now, you still have that little bit of what if I stayed a little bit longer? That still kind of, I don't want to say eats away at you, because I feel like, and I mean, in my opinion of you, you've been very successful in this space thereafter. But so I guess I keep asking the same question over and over again. So there's still
Yeah.
that little bit that I want to keep. It doesn't keep you up at night. It's just
No.
something that thought comes across your brain every once in a blue moon.
I mean, every decision I've made, as crazy as I am and hyperactive and all of that, I really do think long about my career, and I have lots of heart-to-hearts with myself and lots of late night walks around the neighborhood. So I definitely thought about this. I know I made the right move, and
Yeah,
I had to do it. I feel like, I just needed more money at that point. I wanted to start a family. New York's not cheap. And, the SiriusXM was absolutely a lot more money. It was a lot more. So that changed things. Could I have made it work? I mean, we're talking 20 years. So I don't know if I could have made it work for that long. Started
yeah.
my family, bought a house, had 3 kids. I'd like to think I could. Those, other people have made it work in terrestrial radio, so I'd like to think I could. But I saw the opportunity. I knew Steve well. I knew I could trust Steve. I believed in the Sirius XM. I didn't think it, because satellite radio, who knew back then if it was
Right.
going to work or not? I did believe in satellite radio. Mel Karmazin was running Sirius at that time. I had a lot of confidence in Mel Karmazin. And like I said, all of the top broadcasters were there. And it was fun to get out of sports, right? So Sirius XM and Sirius at the time was music, it was news, it was comedy. It wasn't just sports. And as obsessed with sports as I am, it was nice to be able to be amongst others who are working outside of sports. And you really do learn from people when they're outside of your little rabbit hole, your little, looking down the drinking straw. The music broadcasters do it different than the news people do and the comedy people. And now we're learning different techniques and different styles and different ways to do anything, whether it be booking a guest or producing a show or selling. Everyone does it different. So I really did benefit from the variety of talent and content at SiriusXM.
Now, when you first got there, were you the role of I keep picturing, like you said, the phones on each side, you having like 10 different arms at the table, just pushing all the buttons as quickly as they need to be hit. Did you go into that production role, or is that something you had to work your way up to at Sirius?
I was hired as executive producer for sports, so it was a multitasking job, which is tough in any radio station. Almost always, like the guy who does a little bit of everything is the first one out the door. Like you don't have one thing to hang your hat on. So I was doing a lot. I was responsible for the play-by-play board operators who come in and manage the New York Mets broadcast on SiriusXM or the Los Angeles Lakers broadcast, the actual person that's switching from commercials to play-by-play and logging the highlights. I hired all of those people and I managed the play-by-play, made sure the right highlights were being cut. I was running the Sunday Drive. I was working on those specialty shows like Tony Stewart, Reggie Jackson, Tiki Barber. And then I started to manage the sports programming that was there as well. We didn't have Mad Dog Sports Radio yet. It was called Sports Central. And we were working with various national sports scene shows or some that came into SiriusXM. And I would kind of manage those under the Sports Central umbrella. So that was like the beginning of me becoming a programmer in the days leading up to Mad Dog Sports Radio when I was promoted and hired as like the assistant program director for Mad Dog Sports Radio.
What year was it again when you first got that Sirius opportunity?
I was there part-time in '01, and then I was hired full-time on the same day of Howard Stern was brought in. We have the same first day, December 14th, 2005.
Everyone claims that Howard Stern is the reason that XM got popular, but no, now we know it's Matt. It wasn't the hiring of Howard. He just got lucky that Matt was hired on the same day. Now we know. So that's I am going back to my memory of when you and I first met. I want to say it was at an FSGA conference. I want to say as early as 2019, I believe. So you getting hired in 2001 and then you going straight into that executive role, how much did your title / responsibilities change from '01 all the way, let's just go up until when I first met you in 2019?
Wow, well, it was a lot. Well,
Yeah.
certainly part-time, then full-time in 2005, and then just being given a lot of different things to manage, and then assistant program director for Mad Dog Sports Radio, probably around 2007, where I was solely focused on Chris Mad Dog Russo's radio channel and managing the talent and helping the program director Steve Torrey. And along those years, that was when I pitched the concept of fantasy sports radio, which did not exist. I was a very passionate fantasy sports player. My boss, Steve Cohen, was as well. They would never let us talk fantasy sports on WFAN or any terrestrial station back then. There was no legitimate coverage of fantasy sports. And I knew that if it was ever going to happen, SiriusXM was the place that this could actually happen. And Steve believed in me. And Steve asked me to draw it up and create what the channel would be, who we would hire, what events we'd be at, what the sports updates would look like, everything. Like, it had never been done before. It's like writing a book. And I presented it to Steve, and he presented to Mel Karmazin, and Mel said yes. Steve got Mel to say yes. As much as I get credit for launching this channel and designing it and creating it, it was Steve Cohen who got Mel Karmazin to say yes, and ultimately Mel, who had the foresight to say yes to a fantasy sports channel that had never existed in the past. And we had fabulous success with SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, more than anyone thought that we would. We were doing incredible things with all the leagues being taken seriously, with real NFL and MLB players hosting shows, which had never been done before, talking about fantasy sports. And so I was then the program director of programming of fantasy sports. And that was 2010. And I took that title all the way up to 2021 through SiriusXM. I was able to add a little bit about what I was doing as I was trying to grow. I started to work esports. I programmed esports for SiriusXM for 2 years because I knew esports was going to be a big deal. I didn't know anything about it, but no one was doing it. And I said, we have to do esports. So I did it for 2 years, learned a ton. but never was really able to grow or get promoted after that. And that ceiling was another reason, just like at WFAN, that I started thinking about, okay, now I do have the three kids. Now it is midlife, and is this going to be enough for me for the next 20 years? And I wasn't sure radio really was going to be enough. Didn't have a lot of confidence in the industry, the way our leadership was running it. And there were a lot of new media happening, right? We were podcasting, there was streaming. There's so much happening, social media, and I really wasn't learning a lot of it, Travis. It was just radio. I was kind of like, you're the fantasy sports, you're the radio guy, and that's all I learned. So it was a decision by me to not only want to grow financially, but needing to learn these new media skills and the idea that radio isn't innovating enough, and that I had a lot of ideas in my head about what I think our industry needs to do. So I knew that I would regret it the rest of my life if I didn't give myself an opportunity to run my own company or to take a big swing and change the world. So at the end of 2021, I let Steve know that I was going to leave SiriusXM and start my own company, and I left on great terms, which has already proven to be it's always the right move. I've already worked with SiriusXM 3 times since I've left, and I have great relationships over there, and I'm always rooting for them. And I became an entrepreneur with no business experience at all in 2022.
So, if we could take one step back quickly to
Sure.
2010, when you first had the term I always use in these episodes is brain baby. When you had the brain baby of fantasy sports would work perfectly for XM radio, you pitched it, it got approved and everything. We know today, because still exists today, what SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio is. But what was the very, very first vision or idea of what this would look like when you kind of put that pitch together? What was the first vision of what fantasy sports radio should be anyway?
Well, it was taking a lot of what I fell in love with about broadcasting. For sure, it was about phone calls, like absolutely phone calls, people calling, knowledgeable, experienced, we'll say fantasy sports hosts, right? I couldn't ever imagine that players were going to be that. Maurice Jones-Drew of the Jacksonville Jaguars would be hosting his own show. So it was really fantasy experts hosting on the and taking calls. Should I make this trade? Who should I pick up? How do I set my lineup? It was really expert advice, which has been the heart and soul of SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio since launch. And I'll argue, the callers bring life to any radio channel or any media entity. And like we know the callers aren't all entertaining, and not everybody's an expert, but I'm a big fan of two-way interactive radio. Chris Mad Dog Russo has helped me learn that. He was always a big believer in the calls, and some outlets for years never took calls. ESPN Radio never takes phone calls, right? So they've always just had hosts and interviews and no calls. And I feel like that really leaves a lot on the floor. It leaves it it doesn't have a lot of energy. So I knew fantasy sports radio would be heavy on phone calls. It's funny because when we started our first show, John Hansen and Adam Kaplan, who are titans in the industry, Adam walks into my office and says, "We're not going to take any calls on our show." What are you talking about? Like the whole channel's built on someone calling you. Should I trade Keyshawn Johnson for Tony Gonzalez? So it was always phone calls. It was to be authentic for the fantasy player. So that meant that when the Yankees make the playoffs and they have a big deal and they're about to go to that's the lead story on every sports radio station around the country. But on fantasy sports radio, our lead was the player on the Pirates that hit 3 home runs that night. The Pirates are in last place. But our fantasy sports updates are going to start with, well, if you had Josh Bell on your team, you're waking up with 3 home runs on your team. So it was completely flipping how sports would be covered. It was the only way it could work, right? It couldn't be similar to the other sports radio formats out there. It had to be completely different. We had to use the language, pickups, waiver wire, all of those things, especially our hosts and our update anchors, to resonate with the people. And then the writing, Travis, I think that was the other piece. Like it needed to sound like a fantasy sports channel, right? So, I remember like writing a book, writing out all the lines that are going to be promoted on the radio, which you still hear today, 15 years later, they're still using my stuff. And it's funny because like all around the industry, and it's great that we've expanded, and it's amazing how big fantasy sports is. And a lot of people have taken the baton and done great things, but you will still hear the words that I wrote on that Amtrak train on the way down to my first gig as program director. I wrote them all down on a legal pad, and I remember doing it. And I still hear those. I hear them on streaming. I hear them on radio. I hear them everywhere. And I take credit, but I'm also very proud of that. But also sort of like a father. I'm just like SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio is like my fourth child, and it's just so much pride there to see what's happened and how it's grown.
So I think that one of your last comments just there kind of answered the next question I was going to ask, is that without throughout your entire broadcast career up until 2010 to 2021, where you had that SiriusXM fantasy run, because this was essentially brought on from your brain baby, I mean, you kind of already answered it, where you had just a little bit more, I don't want to say like maybe effort, a little bit more you put into it because you knew like, hey, like I planted this seed, so I'm going to be the one that waters this seed. Is that kind of how your thought process was throughout that 11 years?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very hands-on as it is, so yeah, no, absolutely, thoroughly involved in every aspect. But at the same time, learning how to delegate, which was new for me, to be able to trust people with my baby, right? So that was very difficult, like, especially in the very beginning where Steve and Mel, they approved the station, but they said, okay, you got to go run it in DC because, right, this is now post-merger. Sirius and XM had merged. Sirius was in New York, XM was in DC. Company merged. We had buildings in both cities, but we didn't have enough staff or studios in New York, which is where I worked. So they said, you can have the channel, but you've got to make it work with all the part-time people that are in DC, people I didn't know. So that was very difficult. And I had a lot of help, some great people who helped train new people for me. But to trust someone that I'd never known to run the morning show, for example, for my baby was very difficult for me to learn. And obviously, it's something that all managers need to learn. And a lot of talented people have worked on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, more talented than I'll ever be, and have made it as great as it was, but as it is. But yeah, I mean, I was very involved in every aspect, listening to every sports update, listening to every show, regular feedback sessions with the host, with the producers, still writing, still producing. But I will say, as the channel grew and as SiriusXM got really large, I was so far away from radio. I was in meetings and dealing with approvals and processes, and there was no radio anymore for me. It was really my job just to deal with all the red tape and deal with all the corporate meetings, which are necessary in a huge company to allow my staff to really be the ones to play radio and have fun. So I kind of like took the bullet for everyone and did all the meetings and did all the bureaucratic stuff so everyone else could make it happen.
Something you said earlier on this show was that when I was talking about how with that dream job you left, and then I was asking if it's something that kept you up at night, and you're like, no, I just you self-reflect, you think about all the decisions you've made in life, both positive and negative, and then you go on the walks, and it's just, I mean, I have those same things as well. Where have you ever on these walks, have you ever thought about how many people that have ever lived on planet Earth that have tuned into at least 5 to 10 minutes of any Sirius XM fantasy sports broadcast, like what that collective number is, and that your brain baby reached that many people? Is that something that's ever like you've ever calculated, quantified, or thought about?
I've never thought about the amount of people, but I mean, it's part of my everyday life where it comes up. I mean, there's nothing more satisfying to just stumble upon someone, meet someone for the first time, tell them what I've done or did, and they said, "Yep, I love that channel," or "It's on. I remember this," and they're equating their life stories to when they were listening to the channel. It really an amazing impact with so many people, like you said. I mean, the fantasy community really adopted the channel, and that was part of our outreach of just saying, like, this is your channel. It's not us telling the world what fantasy sports should be. We got input from everybody in the business and the fans, and helped them craft the channel. I had people calling me left and right. Matt, you don't know me, but you're making a mistake. You need to do this. Matt, you don't know me, but you need to hire this person. And all of those calls really helped. But amazing and staggering every time somebody tells me that the channel had an impact on them or now their children, right? I listen to it with my kids and we're doing a fantasy draft together, or I love John Hanson, or I love Jeff Mans, or Howard Bender, or Lisa Ann, or all the people that we've had on there. And I do think legacy is important, and I do think about that. And most important for me is how people feel about me long after I'm gone. I want people to remember me and think positive of me. But it's also nice to leave something behind that you've done. And SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio will always be something that I've done that I could say that was part of something I did.
You should definitely be proud of it because yeah, it's how big it is now, and the fact that that was your brain baby is huge and awesome. So chronologically, getting back on track, we're at 2021. You've left the 11-year run of growing and producing and taking the bullet by going to all those meetings
Yeah.
for SiriusXM Fantasy. What was the initial, this is what I want to create on my own idea? And then how quickly did that change within like the first year after you officially left SiriusXM Fantasy?
Well, I wanted media to be more interactive. I wanted it to be gamified. I didn't think it was enough for people to just listen or just watch, right? We had all this technology and even just the streamers that had live chat. I never understood why we couldn't get live chat on SiriusXM or Odyssey or iHeart. All these companies just don't even have live chat, something as silly as that, but at least it's interactive. And I knew with the technology out there that we could do great things. And I worked with some really smart people. And I just started thinking about it, and they pulled all these ideas out of my head, and we did it. So we built an app that was called Better Sports Network, and we were able to gamify our video and our audio talk shows. We were able to ask live questions during a show. So you're watching on the app, and a multiple choice question comes up about, hey, what's Travis going to talk about next? Or do you know where Travis was born? Whatever multiple choice question we wanted, we could float in real time while people are enjoying content. You could win prizes. We had scoreboards. We had e-commerce where you could set up and buy things. And all along that idea would be gamifying the content for the community, making it inclusive. So we're not talking over people's heads. We're trying to bring as many people into the room as possible. Most importantly, having fun, right? Sports media, not fun at all. Fantasy sports, very fun, but also got a little too serious. Like all of media in the sports world, especially back then, is just a little too serious for me. So I thought there was a lot more room for fun. This is the time that betting is coming into the space, and betting brought a lot of negativity or lack of fun, if you will. And I always felt like instead of playing for money, let's just say we're playing for fun, right? We just want to have more fun. We want to watch sports. We want to interact with our community. We want to have fun. So the idea was to build a platform and to create something where communities could enjoy sports content together with like-minded people and compete against each other, for prizes as they're enjoying the content. So that was really the idea of what I wanted to build, and we did build it, and we launched August 1st of 2022, Better Sports Network.
I definitely played around with Better Sports Network app and probably within like those first initial 12 months of it launching. And one of my favorite memories about it was unsports related whatsoever. You dressed up in a full tuxedo on the app for Oscars night, and I can't remember if if it was Oscars trivia or just predicting the next like category or who's gonna win. Whatever it was, I know that I won. Like I got like $250 in Fandango credit.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I was like, this is the best day ever. But you getting so into it that you dressed up in the full tux for Oscars night. One of my favorite memories.
Great.
So I know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but right now in 2025, that specific version of Better Sports Network is doesn't currently exist. So when did that transition change, and what was the thought process behind it?
Well, I was privileged to work with my co-founder Al Williams from Fantasy Alarm, and Al had a lot of business experience, and we were running the app, and we were running our linear network, and it was all working out. We had our talent and we had our network. It was difficult to grow in a crowded space. It's just very difficult to start a company and to gain traction, and expensive as well. So Al's suggestion was to pivot to business platform, production services that, Matt, all these people, and it's such a crowded space. Everyone's producing content. Everyone needs your help. Everybody needs your experience and your relationships. And he was right. And I'd always been asked by people, even while I was working at Better Sports Network, would you listen to this, or what do you think of that, or how would you do this? And ultimately figured out a way to build a business in that way, being able to offer production services on a business to business level. And it's been very successful ever since, being able to solve problems for people in the space. We produce audio, video, we run social media, we do design. I mean, I say yes to everything. So live events, somebody needs a voice, whatever it is. And a great thrill to work beyond sports as well, to work with people outside of sports and to create content, which I love to learn. I have clients that have nothing to do with sports, and it's some of the most rewarding work I do.
So we leave SiriusXM in 2021, and then we have this very fun gamified app, and then we transition more into, I wouldn't call it consulting, but more of like what would be like a single word term for Better Sports Network? Would it be
Production
consult?
services.
Yes, production services. And then you also mentioned at the very beginning when you talked about where you are in 2025 that you were also with VSiN. So at what point of the period of between VSiN and SiriusXM Fantasy did you kind of get that little spark of uh, I really enjoyed what I did for or not VSiN, for SiriusXM. I really enjoyed what I did for these radio stations. Maybe I should look into getting back into that space again.
Well, I was running Better Sports Network. Now we're 3 years in, and I was producing almost everything myself in 2024. I produced over 200 shows in those 365 days, all myself, which was great. I love content, but it was tough to grow the business and produce all the content myself. So I really needed to find financial floor, financial footing for my family so that I could step back a little bit, and try to find a way to grow the business. And Steve Cohen had left SiriusXM and went to VSiN. So I wasn't really actively looking, but when I saw that, I knew I could help VSiN, especially with all the new media skills that I had picked up in the last couple of years. So, and I've always kept in touch with Steve, and of course, a great relationship. So, we started talking about ways I can help, and it turned into a full-time opportunity in November of 2024. Steve knew I was running Better Sports Network and the commitments that I had made, and we found a way to kind of do it all together. So it's just a lot of fun because the two businesses are very similar. One is very heavy fantasy sports, does a lot of betting, and VSiN is mostly betting talk, very heavy TV, lots of radio. I'm remote for both. I'm doing different things for both, but my skill sets are growing greatly by working with both companies. And I found ways to really offer value to VSiN based on my work at Better Sports Network, whether it be influencers that I work with or trends that I'm seeing, or as a board member of the Fantasy Sports and Gaming Association, representing VSiN now, making connections, bringing potential sponsors to them. And finding new ways to really help in the new media world, whether it be social media or algorithms, vertical short videos that I'm doing for them, and it's almost everything but radio. But I'm also still working with SiriusXM through VSiN, which is really amazing because now VSiN has a SiriusXM channel on channel 158. And if you listen to that channel, you'll hear my production in almost every commercial break. There's not only a show promo, but a feature, and I produce all those features. And it is a great thrill still for me to hear my production on SiriusXM.
I love it. So chronologically speaking, we've caught up to today.
Yep.
The question I like wrapping these podcasts up is a reflection question. So throughout your entire life, where you originally knew that you had some interest in the animal stuff, and you're like, oh, too many things that I'm not interested in with all the vet things. Let me put that aside. Let's get into sports. All the way to where you are now. There's a lot of different events happen. Some that were in your control, some that were outside of your control. But all of these we essentially referred to as butterfly effect. Which individual event do you credit the most to, whether it's a decision you made or something outside of your control, to where you are now?
Well, I mean, I don't know how to. That is a really tough one. I mean, I'm doing
That's why I
so much
saved it
right
for the
now.
end.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing so much right now. So I don't know. I mean, is there a real decision? I mean, the number one thing is the multitasking, right? If I didn't have that, I would never be able to be as successful as I am right now, or frankly, doing as much as I'm doing right now. I look back to launching the channel Fantasy Sports Radio in 2010, just became a father and thinking like I'll never be busier than I am right now. 15 years later, I'm doing like 5 times as much as I was then. So you get better at what you do and you meet people and they open doors for you. A decision that, I mean, I don't know how to answer the question. I mean, I don't know because I mean it has to be linked to Steve, right? Because I mean Steve brought me to SiriusXM and he brought me to VSiN. So, maybe it was but there was no conscious decision to go meet Steve Cohen and buddy up with him. So he's gonna take me places. So I mean, I would just think it's like my desire to always do more, to take on as much as I can, always say yes to everything, refuse to be outworked, that like kind of that mindset. And it really just started from day one at WVOX of me just being committed to getting a job in this industry immediately, not leaving New York, and doing everything I can to grow.
Well, the multitasking definitely paid off, and I was smirking there while you were saying you thought you were busy, you thought it was busy. Oh, I got to do 10 things, and yet 5 year or 15 years later, it's now 50 things. That's always how it is, but. Yes, as you said, the more you do things, the better you get at it, and then the less it seems like you're doing 50 things. So that concludes this episode here, Matt. I do want to thank you again for sharing your story with us. We do, if you're watching this on YouTube right now, we have his name right underneath his face. You can send him a connection request if you want to on LinkedIn, but I can't guarantee you he's going to accept it.
Oh, come on. No, I accept everybody's requests. And that's true. I love LinkedIn. I'm very authentic there. And I love learning from people.
Well, again, appreciate your time. If you guys enjoyed listening to this episode, make sure you subscribe to whatever channel you're watching or listening to on. It goes up every Tuesday, a new episode, 6 a.m. Eastern Time. Thank you again, Matt, and thanks for tuning in, guys.
Thanks for having me, Travis.